the Man of Steel has to make the ultimate sacrifice. Here's a look at the DC Multiverse, Batman v Superman, Doomsday, and Superman. Gotham City's formidable, forceful vigilante takes on Metropolis's most revered modern-day savior, while a new threat quickly arises, putting mankind in greater danger than it's ever known before. Okay, who's going to go in there and clean up the mess that Luthor left in the lab? Before we actually find that out, we're going to draw straws. I think that's the best way to decide. Let's take first the tape measure and see how tall the Batman v Superman, Doomsday, and Superman actually stand. One rather apparent observation I noticed about Superman is going to involve me bringing in the original Superman we got from the Snyder Cut. First things first, though, let's grab the tape measure and measure the biggest boy. Doomsday is going to stand at 10 inches in height. See? It says 10 inches right there. That's translating, though, to a figure that's about 25.5 centimeters tall. Then to a shorter Supes, and I mean a shorter Supes. He's actually only going to stand at 7.25 inches in height, or about 18.5 centimeters tall. For comparisons, before we actually look at Supes, let's bring in both Batman and Wonder Woman that also appeared in Batman v Superman. And I think the reason why I feel they actually shorten the size of Superman. By the way, though, in case you are wondering, here's what he looks like with the Snyder Cut release Superman. So clearly he is shorter than the original one that we got before. It isn't just, though, the case that they changed out to a cloth cape. If you put the boots side to side and you look at the height of Superman in the Batman v Superman over here to the Snyder Cut, clearly, though, the Snyder Cut of Superman is a little bit taller. But I think, though, the reason why they chose to do that, dwarf the size of Superman, that is, probably had more to do with the fact that they wanted to make him at least more closer in size to both Wonder Woman and Batman. That's the only thought I could think of, because if not for that, if you were to, say, compare him along with the Snyder Cut Superman, I think then he would be a little bit too tall and probably out of scale. As for the accessories, though, that come included with the pair, the figure first of all come with a pair of display stands. Both the stands are no different from one another. They got the DC logo branded down below. They've got one peg off to the far corner that can plug into either one of the figure's feet. They have one, and they have one peg. So obviously you can't put both feet on both pegs. Unless maybe you decide you want to use both display stands for Doomsday. I think that would be a little excessive myself. One thing that's kind of a little excessive, too, is the fact that figures do come included with trading cards. Not the fact that they get two of them. You get one for Superman. You get one for Doomsday. But, though, what's interesting is on the back of the card, the read-ups are exactly the same. I could probably get away with the idea that maybe Superman would have a read-up, and in fact, this is the same read-up that also got on the back of Wonder Woman's card and Batman. But then to have that also on Doomsday, it would have made better sense, I feel, to have a read-up that's a little bit more relating to, of course, the character. The fact that Lex is meddling around with Kryptonian DNA. I just feel like they probably could have done something a little bit different on the back of the card so that the read-ups weren't exactly the same. Let's move those off to the side, though. The figure does come included, at least for Superman. He's really the only figure that actually, out of the two, come included with accessories. Batman, first of all, comes included with four separate swappable hands. He comes with a gripping hand, first of all, to hold the kryptonite spear. He also comes included with a relaxed hand. He does also have a gestured hand, or a flight hand, and also a pointing hand. To change out the hands on Supes, it's just a case of obviously just pulling the hand off the peg. And then find the hand that you want to use. I'm going to put on right now the gripping hand because I want to have the Kryptonian spear in his hand. Although not long, that's going to kill Superman after all. Hands, again, are super easy to change. Put Superman down here for a second. The figure also does come included with the Kryptonite spear. It does answer already one question I had. When we looked at the armored Batman, not too long ago in fact, I mentioned though that the armored Batman didn't come included really much in the way of accessories. Not only does Superman have, and I think there's a little piece of tape left behind here. Let's just peel that off. Not only did Superman have the Kryptonian spear, but I think also the armored Batman that comes, well, the armored Batman that is the Platinum Edition is also going to come include the Kryptonite spear as well. So you get a couple of spears offered around. So if you're a little disappointed the fact that the original armored Batman doesn't have that, you get it with this pack. You get it also as well with the Platinum Edition armored Batman too. The spear, though, don't want to drop the spear. The spear, though, can be held in his hand, although, again, you don't want to probably have this in his hand too long. Superman doesn't really like the idea. Him and Kryptonite don't go really hand in hand. Peanut butter and jelly, not at all the case when you have a Kryptonian and Kryptonite. But again, just pry the hands. They're a little harder, I find, like the grip, that is a little harder to get the spear in there. I would certainly recommend, though, heating this first with hot water. Did I heat this with hot water in preparation for this review? Absolutely. not. But anyways, though, you can get the spear also in his hand. I'm gonna fiddle around with that and get that all prepped for final looks. In the meantime, though, let's get a closer look at Superman now. I already established the fact that if you look at them back to back, I'm trying to get this as leveled as I possibly can get this. I don't know if can you see? Yeah, not only, though, and maybe it's also his neck, too. The Snyder Cut Superman maybe have had a longer neck and maybe may have added then to the extra height that he has. But if you look at them, it almost does seem like he's also got a smaller Superman emblem. The one that was on the Snyder Cut, visibly at least, I feel has a little bit bigger of a Superman S. The one that we get here now with the Batman v Superman release seems, though, like the S is a little bit smaller. Is it just me? Maybe it's just my eyes. My eyes don't deceive me, though. Clearly, though, you got a nice warmer color here for Superman's face and his neck. It was a little bit more paler, though, when we looked at the original Snyder release of him. The biggest changes, though, obviously, are that in the cape. The original Snyder Cut would have had a plastic cape. And now, with following the format of most DC Multiverse figures, the new Superman has this glorious cape. I first of all love the color. I also like that they added a wire built into the side of the frame. So, of course, if you want to put a dynamic pose into Supes, you can easily pull that off. You can maybe even have it off to the side like this. Oh, that looks good. Very stoic. So I love the fact that, first of all, even if they were exactly the same figure and there wasn't a height difference at all, being that just having a fabric cape being introduced to this figure is more than enough for me to want to get this set. Now, of course, I can have this guy displayed very nicely with my Batman and my Wonder Woman. Head sculpt-wise, it very much still looks like Cavill. I don't think the original head sculpt was questionable at all either. But I do think that the warmer tones work a lot better now for Superman's head. I don't think much has really been changed here for the Superman costume. Pretty much the same color. Maybe you could say it's just a little bit bluish, a little more blue in color. The lower belt is about the same. The boots also are different. I should say the same except for the bottom of the soles. One couldn't help but notice, though, that the original Superman from the Snyder Cut had textured soles. Now the Superman that we get here in this 2-pack actually just has regular flat feet. The articulation on this guy is going to be retained the same, of course. His head's going to be on a ball joint. Very tight, though, getting this guy out of the packaging. Head looks up, head looks down. Head moves also back and forth. The upper torso is going to be on a ball joint. The lower abdomen is also the same. The arms rotate all the way around. You can get this guy in almost a T-pose. A little on the tighter side. There we go. There's a T-pose right there. The arms do have a bicep swivel. They also possess as well a double hinge on the elbow. And the hands do swivel all the way around, whether you want to use these hands or other pairs of hands. As for his legs, the legs do easily split out. Ratcheted joints working, of course, behind the scenes. Legs go forward. Legs go back. There's a swivel there at the top of the thigh. Double hinge on the knee. Again, you're not going to have any articulation here for the boot because it's just a continued sculpt for the rest of the calf, but he does still, in fact, have ankle articulation. Not only moves up and down, it does rock back and forth, and yes, Superman still retains toe articulation. Though he has different those soles, he still manages to still have foot articulation, at least toe articulation. So a nice-looking Superman. If this guy was just released alone, I would probably still have picked him up, even though, again, I already have the other Superman from before. And just get him to stand here. Let's move our focus now over to Doomsday. Now, I know the big issue really with Doomsday was the fact that they rushed this guy so quickly into the movie. Oh, there goes Superman. You know what? Let's grab a display stand. Display stands are there for the reasons of obviously keeping these guys from falling over. So let's get him onto the display stand, make sure he's not going to be going anywhere. While I'm getting Superman actually on his display stand. I know, again, one of the big issues really with Doomsday was the fact that everybody really kind of felt that Snyder rushed this guy too soon into the movie, that they could have easily pushed Doomsday into an appearance later on into the franchise. Well, we all already know that Snyder's franchise didn't pursue any further than the Snyder Cut. The thing that's interesting, though, is that Snyder's already gone on record in saying that this isn't the real Doomsday. In fact, actually, they kind of even tease this in the movie, too, when the computer in the Kryptonian ship says that they had outlawed such experiments, indicating, though, that Doomsday, the real Doomsday, is still existing somewhere out in space, and that this is basically just another version of Doomsday. Even though, by the namesake alone, you would think that he's the same character, I still think, though, the original Doomsday is still somewhere out in space. Not that it really matters anymore. One real issue I have, though, with the figure is not necessarily his size. He's also very hollow, too. You'll kind of really notice this right away when you start to kind of move his arms around, that his torso feels... Knock, knock, who's that? Ooh, actually, that did hurt. That his torso does feel like it's a little on the more hollow side. You got hard plastic, though, for his arms, and also you got that down below for his legs. The only thing, again, that's a little hollow is Doomsday's torso. One real issue, though, I have kind of with him is more the color. The only thing I really have like as a comparison right now, we'll go back to the card. If you look at Doomsday's card and then you look at the figure here, I feel like there's a lot more grays on the movie version of the character than what we actually get here. He has all this now welcomed green on here that I don't think really need to be on there in the first place. I think, if anything, I would have kept the colors really more of a darker gray, added maybe some browns, more darker colors like that. I think, though, the colors don't quite match the way that he should look in the movie. The head sculpt, for what it is, as ugly as it is, does look pretty good, though. It's kind of really hard to make out his eyes, though, because they're so incredibly small. I do like the grimace that they've sculpted on his face. They've painted in the teeth really well. And even though I don't think that the colors match 100%, they've done a really nice job of sculpting this guy. He looks finished from all the sides. I love the way they've also sculpted his spinal cord on the back here. There's his behind. Not that if everybody wants to really see what Doomsday's behind looks like. But again, like a really well-sculpted figure. Visibly, you can kind of see, like in his joints, what the plastic would have originally started at. It's more of like a very bright blue plastic. And clearly, they would have gone in there and painted everything else as well. Now, as Doomsday suffers damage in the movie, he starts to develop these spikes. In the beginning, though, this is kind of like the early stages of him. So he doesn't have much in the way of spikes sticking out of his noggin. He certainly doesn't have much spikes sticking out of his body. But as he continues to progress and charge up and power up, spikes start to protrude out from his body. So he's got a few of them here, but not nearly enough. I feel like this guy probably could be getting released again. I mean, this guy would have been tooled from scratch. Cost involved with just producing this mold from scratch. I would like to think that they're probably going to get some more mileage out of this, so you never know. We might get ourselves a Platinum Edition Doomsday down the road. For the figure's articulation, though, Doomsday's head is going to be, again, on that ball joint, so it allows the head to rotate all the way around. Head's going to look up, well, if you blinked it, you may have missed it. Head's only going to go up about that far, but the head's going to look down a little bit better. Head's going to also rock back and forth, but only just a little bit. Now, the upper torso and like his lower abdomen are all essentially one mold. So when you're rotating the one, you're rotating the both. They're only on a single ball joint, so they're going to rotate all the way around. Yes, he does have still sort of the softer figure diaper here, but I think it's still pretty close. The only thing that's a little jarring, though, is that there's a lot more blue here and a lot less of that on the rest of his body. His shoulders allow the arms to rotate also all the way around. When you bring the arms out at a T pose, I can't help but feel like this one arm here has, even though it hasn't yet done it, I keep feeling like as I'm moving it, this arm wants to like detach itself from the rest of his torso. Again, it hasn't happened yet. I know it's going to probably happen at some point, though. Still full rotation, T pose on this guy. He does have a swivel, not in the bicep necessarily, but he has a swivel here in the forearm. He has a very, very small hinge here for the elbow. Obviously, though, probably not to disrupt much of the sculpt, but it only allows the elbow to bend at a little less than 90 degrees. Hands also rotate all the way around. There's a hinge back and forth there as well. The legs split out. Nice ratcheted joints work in there as well. Legs go forward, the legs go back. There's a nice swivel there too. Single hinge, a loud creaky hinge there for the lower leg. And again, you got yourself the ankle articulation, an ankle rocker, and toe articulation. That's what he looks like. Not that you would not get this close to Doomsday's feet, but he does have, again, the notable pegs on the bottoms. I think there's enough, again, changes here that Doomsday really realistically could have been released on his own. I still would have picked him up. But the fact that they give him now an updated Superman to battle, I think was really a nice touch. Doomsday, again, like, I think color-wise is not really as close as it should be maybe in the movie. But again, what we do have at least, though, is a modern version of Superman. Not that the original Superman was all that bad before, but of course now we got ourselves a fabric cape. Really nice. He's also a little bit shorter, too, which might be a little bit jarring to collectors the first time you get this guy out of the packaging. If you had planned, for example, to put him next to the Regeneration Black Suit Superman, which is using and borrowing the same mold as this guy, you can notice there's obviously a size difference. But again, I think the size difference had more to do, cleverly on their part, to reduce the size of Superman so he would be a little bit more than in size with both Batman and Wonder Woman. That's at least my thought. Because again, if you take yourself the Kryptonian in the Snyder Cut, I think he's a little too tall. I mean, being the size of Ben Affleck and that Henry Cavill is a lot shorter of an actor, I think, though, that one that we now get in the 2-pack makes a little bit more realistic sense if you're looking to display the 3 on your shelf. I may have had to cheat a little bit here in final looks in order to have Superman looking like he's flying towards Doomsday with the Kryptonian spear. Obviously, he can't do that without a flight stand. I would have liked, though, that a flight stand could have been included with this pack, but considering how much plastic already got allotted for Doomsday, I can understand why they chose to leave it off. The flight stands, though, are certainly something you can easily get a dime a dozen if you already are collecting DC Multiverse figures. I've got enough of these at least, although I've noticed over time that the flight stand necks start to develop looseness. At least the one I'm using right now seems good and tight. I couldn't help but also notice the way Superman's flying the Kryptonian spear that's probably not the best place Superman to be poking Doomsday. Still, that's as good as we're going to get here, at least with a small rotating rotisserie like this. I'm chuckling to myself. The figure, though, as a whole, I do think that there's improvements made for Superman that even if he was sold on his own, I would still want to pick him up. Doomsday, though, again, is a nice inclusion because we didn't have a Doomsday up to this point. The only thing about it, though, is that Doomsday's colors don't quite gel with the colors that he looked like in the movie. More darker grays, I feel, should have been really given to this plastic, but to have finally a Doomsday that Superman can not only die but be resurrected, finally get this guy part of a 2-pack, not a bad thing at all. What do you guys, though, think of the Batman v Superman versus Doomsday? Overlooking, of course, the fact that it looks like Superman's going to be poking him in the groin. If you guys did enjoy this video, though, do it a solid, throw it a like. You guys want to stick around for more so? I hope so. Hit that subscribe, turn on that bell, and come back. As always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.